Hello. It's me again. I've come to talk to you. It's been a while, I know, and I apologize. Things have been a little hectic around my end of the world, and that sort of means that personal projects like blogging or vlogging tends to get put on the back burner for a little while. Things are beginning to settle into a rhythm now, so I'm going to hopefully get back into it. Now, that said, I had an idea that was bouncing around in my head and thought I would come online and talk about it, because that's what vlogging is. Anyways, so I've been thinking about different genres of game worlds, and the notion of post-apocalyptic settings came to my mind. I find them fascinating. I find them interesting and worthy of conversation. Now, before I get too far, you have to start with an understanding of the term post-apocalyptic. Apocalypses, well, first off, the plural is in fact apocalypses. Now, that said, the apocalypse actually derives from the Greek, which means to reveal what is hidden. It's a reference to the revelations from the Bible. Actually, a lot of the sort of epic disaster words kind of come from biblical origins. Cataclysm means the flood, and Armageddon is a reference to Megiddo, the place where the final battle would be fought. So, obviously, there are some religious contexts to apocalypse. A post-apocalyptic setting sounds a little weird if you think about it in terms of meaning the end of the earth, because that's one of the common definitions for apocalypse. Well, if the world ends, who's left to have a setting? I mean, rocks fall, everyone dies, the planet breaks apart, and no more setting. I mean, I suppose you could have aliens show up and find the rocks floating in space and say, that was fascinating. There were people there once. Too bad they're all dead. Actually, it'd probably make a pretty cool story. But not really a setting, per se. So, for it to be a post-apocalyptic setting, that world ending needs to mean something other than the end of the literal world. And that's kind of a thing that happens. In the term of post-apocalyptic settings, they're talking about the end of the world as you know it. One of those popular post-apocalyptic settings is Walking Dead. Well, obviously, the world didn't end. They're walking around. There are cities everywhere. People are driving cars, motorcycles. There are people wandering around in the remnants of their world. But the world as they know it is gone. The support structures that made life livable are gone. All it is sort of the grinding horror of the zombie apocalypse. Trust me, there will be no happy endings for The Walking Dead. That's kind of why I stopped watching it. But another good example is Thundar the Barbarian. Again, the world is still there, but it's not the world you recognize. I mean, if I dropped you into Thundar's world, well, first thing you'd notice is, why is the moon broken? And then you would start noticing things like, why does my cell phone not work? Why can I not buy food? Oh, why is this cannibal trying to eat me? So, it's not a great place. Still probably a better place to live than The Walking Dead, but most places are. Now, that is actually a very gameable, sort of a post-apocalyptic setting. In fact, I would love a Thundar the Barbarian post-apocalyptic game setting. Somebody get on this. That's sort of the premise behind Gamma World. Again, it's our world broken and shattered and the remnants of that world where people live is the gameable setting. You have the super science stuff mixed in with the people just barely scrounging street sign armor and, maybe have a rifle with a single bullet in it. You've got swords and chainsaws in the same setting. It's the world we know without the mechanisms that make it our world. And therein lies the problem with, post-apocalyptic fantasy. Now, post-apocalyptic fantasy can mean it's fantasy set after an apocalypse that destroys our world. Like I said, Thundar, Rifts, things like that. But it can also mean your fantasy world has been shattered. The support mechanisms have fallen down. If you want an example of what this might look like, start reading about the Bronze Age collapse. Really fascinating subject to begin with. But, more to the point, the Bronze Age collapse is a perfect example of sort of a fantasy world that would be post-apocalyptic. Some series of disasters destroys all the major civilizations, and then all that's left are the sort of remnants of those civilizations eking out an existence without trade or government or anything that supported a better class of life. You could do this in a fantasy setting, but bear in mind, some settings don't actually deal well with this. Forgotten Realms has had their version of an apocalypse several times now. Time of Troubles, The Sundering, what have you. Spell Plague. None of them were apocalyptic. They were bad, but at the end of the day, those things that were recognizably Forgotten Realms were still there. The average farmer was not actually overly affected by this change. Yes, there were a couple of kingdoms that came and went, but for the most part, the guy, if I picked up a guy before the Time of Troubles and dropped him into post-Sundering Forgotten Realms, he might have to learn some of the names, but the world would be very familiar with them. The support structures that he would have normally been familiar with are still there. Gold is still gold. Language is still language. Things haven't changed that much. Doing it with the Forgotten Realms, you would need to do something that wiped out everybody and left only a bare minimum. Same with Eberron or any other fantasy setting. If you want a post-apocalyptic fantasy, you have to start with a high level of civilization and then take it away. Now, those are the ideas I had about a post-apocalyptic setting. I think it is a fascinating place to play around in. The themes of desperation, of trying to figure out what defines humanity when all of the trappings of civilization are pulled away, is interesting to me. You should, check out The Road or what have you. Anyway, that's my sort of vloggy thought on apocalypses today, or post-apocalyptic settings anyway. I hope you liked my little ramble tonight. I will ramble some more later. There will be more rambles to come, I assure you. Anyway, subscribe, like, share, and, check the Patreon out if you feel up to it. And I will see most of you guys later. Oh, I should point out, I am going to be at Gen Con. So if you want to meet up at Gen Con, drop me a line. I am looking to hang out with people that I don't get to hang out with much when I'm at Gen Con. Anyway, have a good day and stay out of trouble.